SLT speed up සවාරිය සමගින් සද්දන්ත වාසි රැල්ලක්. අලුත් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සබඳතා සඳහා පළමු මාස දෙක පුරා data double speed up with SLT.
A threat to the head of state. Inspector General of Police commissions a special investigation into an alleged conspiracy to assassinate the president. When two giants collide, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, concerned by the deteriorating relationship between China and US, might have on global trade and geopolitics.
It's in the background of a rebalancing that finally the US-China relationships have to be determined, and with that the geopolitics of Asia.
Common consensus. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa intends to incorporate all communities in a constitutional and political reform dialogue.
I am not only willing but eager to continue serious discussions with the Tamil and Muslim leaders in respect of appropriate constitutional and political reforms.
Save our name. Sri Lanka Cricket makes a plea to media seeking a stop to bad publicity.
What I'm saying is not to bring the image down of the organization by giving bad publicity.
Suchi breaks silence. Myanmar's de facto leader opens up on jailed journalists. Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm NANAYAKKARA. Now your top story this evening. The anti-corruption force has come forward to reveal an alleged conspiracy to assassinate the President Maithripala Sirisena and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa. During a media briefing in Kandy yesterday, social activist NAMAL revealed to media certain audio recordings of alleged phone conversations between himself and the DIG of Terrorist Investigation Division. The organisation also made a complaint at the Police Commission. When contacted, Police media spokesperson SP Ruwan said that Inspector General of Police Pujit Jayasundara instructed the Police Special Investigations Unit to begin investigations into the allegation.
The anti-corruption force yesterday levelled allegations centering telephone conversations with DIG Nalaka De Silva, who heads Sri Lanka's Terrorist Investigation Division.
Sri Lanka Police.
We convened this media briefing today to make a revelation about DIG Nalaka De Silva, the Director of Terrorist Investigation Division. I will reveal only some of the evidence we have. What we have may threaten national security. Can a DIG make such a statement? He says that there should be a plan by which the Prime Minister could take credit.
ඉතින් මේක දුන්නම මේක ටයිප් කරලා ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකක් විදිහට අපි දුන්නම අගමැතිතුමා මේකට බෑ කියන්නේ නැහැ මොකද මේකේ මම කියන්නේ අගමැති කාර්ය සභාව නෑ ජනාධිපතිතුමා අගමැතිතුමා දැන් පොඩ්ඩක් පැටලිලා ඉන්නේ ඒක තමයි අපි අගමැතිතුමා තමයි පුම්බන්න ඕනේ අගමැතිතුමාට ලකුණු දෙන්න විදිහට කරපුවානේ මොකද ජනාධිපතිතුමා පුම්බන්න විදියක් නැද්ද ජනාධිපතිතුමා ලං කරන් ඉන්න මේකෙත් විශ්වාස නැහැ ඕනේ ඔක්කොම අනිත් පැත්ත ගෝඨාපිට වැඩ කරන උන්ට ලං කරන් ඉන්නේ ඕනේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒක කිව්වට හරි ජනාධිපතිතුමා බුද්ධි ලෝකත් ඔයසෙකු ඒ ගේම යන්නේ ඕනේ ඔව් ජනාධිපතිතුමා අතරමං කරන ගේමක් යන්නේ යාට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒක අතරමං කරන ගේම වානවද දාන වෙනකොට අතරමං කරන්නේ
I got to know this person about a year ago. I got to know about an international terror plan which I informed to IGP Pujit Jayasundara, who then directed me to DIG Nalaka De Silva. During our discussion, what we highlighted was that Gotabaya Rajapaksa and President Sirisena will get together in 2020. There's a clash between President Sirisena and the Prime Minister. He told me that something should be done to either Gotabaya Rajapaksa or Maithripala Sirisena before 2020. When asked what exactly should be done to them, he said to get anything done through Makandure Madush because he has a grudge against both Gotabaya and Maithripala Sirisena. So DIG Nalaka Silva asked me to do this. Recently, I got to know about a provincial councillor in the east called Pushparajan. Since I got to know about a terrorism connection, I informed Nalaka Silva about this. But he said, let's continue the investigation. But when President visits Badiklo or Ampara, we should attack him and put the blame on Pushparajan. Devarajan. I believe that I shouldn't keep this to myself anymore. I have realized that he has some kind of protection. This conversation took place about 2 months ago. Usually no one will take such a risk to make such a revelation. I should say that I did this risking my life.
Accordingly, the organisation made a complaint at the National Police Commission today. Afterwards, the Director Operation of the Anti-Corruption Force, NAMAL, lodged a complaint with the National Authority for the Protection of Victims of Crimes and Witnesses in PETA today.
We actually made the complaint and we believe that a fair investigation will be carried out.
Now moving on with other local stories, President Maithripala Sirisena called an urgent cabinet meeting today despite the weekly cabinet meeting being held on Tuesday. Among matters discussed were Minister Sarath Fonseca's criticism of the incumbent army commander and failure to file cases against Tri-Forces personnel who are in remand custody.
The special cabinet meeting was chaired by President Maithripala Sirisena at the Presidential Secretariat noon today. At the meeting, the President had spoken on the investigations relating to alleged abduction and disappearance of 11 youths in 2008 and 2009. He has given instructions to expedite legal action pertaining to the case. He has also stated that it is wrong to hold Tri-Forces personnel in remand custody for long without filing cases against them. In the meantime, the head of state as well as ministers have expressed their displeasure over the statement made by Field Marshal Minister Sarath Fonseca on the current army commander. The President has expressed his utter displeasure over the incident and the ministers had shared the same sentiment. Following the meeting, Acting Minister of International Trade Sujeeva Senasinghe had this to say to media.
No, it was not discussed. We discussed the country's overall situation.
No,
that too was not discussed, but some ministers spoke about the independence of the judiciary. The Prime Minister said that he will be back in the country tomorrow. President Maithripala Sirisena says it is essential to make the public transportation system a pleasant service for the general public. A discussion was held on maintaining a regular transportation service and uplifting the quality of the public transportation service at the Presidential Secretariat this morning. Discussions were mainly focused on the monitoring progress of the Sahasara Nimu Project 2016 in order to introduce a quality transportation service to the country and on how to drive the project forward in order to deliver a better service for the future. The head of state also directed the officials to guide the people towards public transportation in a bid to reduce traffic congestion and ensure security of the public at the discussion. Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe told ASEAN leaders that he's concerned about the deterioration in relations between China and the United States. Premier Wickremesinghe was among speakers at the panel session on Asia's geopolitical outlook at World Economic Forum on ASEAN in Hanoi yesterday. Pointing to growing tension between China and the United States, leaders expressed their fears that unilateral action between the two countries will have massive effects on the global economy and geopolitical landscape.
The World Economic Forum on ASEAN commenced in Hanoi on Tuesday, in which leaders of 10 countries, including Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, are attending. In line with the forum, an open conference on geopolitical landscape of ASEAN was held yesterday with the participation of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and several foreign ministers of other nations.
Looking at geopolitics of Asia and the frictions between America and China, I would be concerned about how the rebalancing of global order takes place. This is in the background of the rebalancing that finally the US-China relationships have to be determined, and with that the geopolitics of Asia. It's in the last 70 years after the war, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union, between Asia come up. An original understanding between China and US seems to be evaporating partially. The prosperity of Asia depends on maritime trade and the need for a free and open, stable maritime order based on rules-based order. So what Sri Lanka is now attempting is to ensure the freedom of navigation within the Indian Ocean. The geopolitics of the Indian Ocean itself has changed with the presence of China and the interest shown by some of the other powers. ASEAN has to play a key role because all the choke points come within ASEAN. But you have to remember the diversity of the Indian Ocean. This is just a start of a new economic order, which will see Asia at the center. By 2050, you could see that. The responsibility then passes on to Asia on how we maintain such an order, what are the rules that we are going to formulate.
Meanwhile, Premier Wickremesinghe held discussions with his Cambodian counterpart Hun Sen, South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa and Secretary General of ASEAN Lim Jok-hoi today.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa says that he expects to hold discussions with Tamil and Muslim leaders in the country regarding constitutional and political reforms which need to be focused on. The former president expressed these views during his public lecture yesterday in New Delhi on India-Sri Lanka relations, the way ahead.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is engaged in a 3-day official visit to India, met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the Indian President's house, Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi. Representative from the former president stated to other Derana that these discussions between former President Rajapaksa and the Indian Premier helped to grow the long-term friendship between the two. Meanwhile, upon the invitation of Member of Indian Parliament, senior BJP leader Dr. Subramanian Swamy, former President delivered a public lecture yesterday on India-Sri Lanka relations, the way ahead. The conference was held at the New Delhi Municipal Council.
We did not at any time wage an ethnic war. The military action was certainly not directed against the Tamil community. I sent my armed forces into battle only when the terrorists, throwing all humanitarian consideration to the winds. On many occasions in the past, military action against terrorism in Sri Lanka had to be suspended because of strong pressure from overseas. During the final phase of the war, the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom and the Foreign Minister of France met me and were adamant that hostilities be discontinued. I replied, if I were to accede to their demand when the end of terrorism was in sight, this would be nothing short of betrayal of my country. After an interval of more than 2 decades, my government held elections to the Provincial Council of the North. After the change of government in my country in 2015, the current administration co-sponsored a resolution moved at the Human Rights Council in putting blame to our country and its armed forces for the consequences of the conflict. This effectively silenced countries across the globe. The country which brought the resolution subsequently withdrew from the Human Rights Council itself, denouncing it as the most dismal failure of the United Nations system. I am not only willing but eager to continue serious discussions with the Tamil and Muslim leaders in respect of appropriate constitutional and political reforms. Complete understanding between Sri Lanka and India will be one of the pillars of our foreign policy. My current visit to your capital must be viewed in this context.
I was very impressed in his recent interview. He said, all said and done, Indians are my relatives. And I know that our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, he is not easily shackled by past views. He makes his own mind.
Following the conference, journalists from India today inquired from parliamentarian NAMAL Rajapaksa regarding the allegations of corruption against the Rajapaksa family.
Previous government was done on the basis of the kind of allegations of corruption, so on and so forth, against your family.
They're still struggling to find anything, and they were talking about golden horses, Lamborghinis, and they were talking about $18 billion accounts. All those were fabricated for political gain. And September 5th, we had the biggest ever protest coming into Colombo. We believe that we use Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent policy to take over Colombo city at that time, and we gave the message to the government. It is sad to say that the government purposely tried to poison the milk packets and give it to the protesters. 80 of them were hospitalized.
Mahinda Rajapaksa had indeed said that there was foreign hand, referring to and alluding to India's hand and India meddling in Sri Lanka's domestic affairs.
Sri Lankans widely believe that there was a foreign hand in the past presidential election, but now we're looking for the future. There's no point we talk about what happened in the past.
Major allegations again against Mahinda Rajapaksa was that he really favored the Chinese, but it seems like the continuing administration now has not changed its tactic with China as well.
You know, my father's administration or the previous government always came to India for the projects, even for Mandura Port, Mattala Airport, highways. We always looked for India. But unfortunately, at that time, it was not delivered from India. So then we had to look for other partners. I mean, we can't let our people wait till someone comes and develop it for us. So we looked for a partner, and China was gracious enough, good enough to come and help us. And it was purely based on transactions.
Now, State Minister of Finance Iran Wickramaratne is of the view that the next president's first assignment upon taking office should be the introduction of public sector reforms. Speaking at the Sri Lanka Economic Summit 2018 held in Colombo today, he also said that the constitutional amendments will be required if not for such reforms.
The Sri Lanka Economic Summit 2018, organised by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, got underway in Colombo today. At the summit, emphasis was on shaping a turnaround for the Sri Lankan economy while delving deep into areas such as trade, investment and services. The focus was also on learning from successful companies and steering the bureaucracy to work more effectively, thus meeting emerging challenges.
The fuel price reforms that have been undertaken, which was a major step for us because some people say, you know, the government is indecisive, you take one step forward and then one step back. It's the nature of a coalition government. And I often tell people that you are looking at me and saying, why is it happening? You are to blame. And I turn around and tell them, you are to blame because that's a mandate you gave us. Now this situation, the reason I'm saying this is, this situation can continue in the future too.
The State Minister of Finance went on to speak about much needed public sector reforms.
There are certainly implementation issues, lots of hiccups on implementation, right? So public sector reform, I think with the next mandate, the new president's number one, in my view, number one objective for the new president with a mandate has to be public sector reform. Sri Lanka has nearly 1.4 million that is in the public sector and in the defense forces. But that is a major reform, the single biggest reform that will have to be undertaken, because if we don't undertake that reform, we need a new constitution. The moment you use the word constitution, people think that's something to do with the war in the north. We need a new constitution because we just need to say we have 25 ministries and no more. These are the ministries. They are defined in the constitution. No political leader in this country should be given any discretion to decide what the ministries of this country are, because they have failed us for 70 years. Why should we give them that? We should put it in the constitution.
Governor of the Western Province, HEMAKUMARA NANAYAKKARA, says that procedures followed to order chairs for the Chamber of the Western Provincial Council was in violation of accepted norms and procurement procedures. The Governor today took measures to cancel the purchase of 144 chairs for the Western Provincial Council, with each costing around 640,000 rupees.
The procedures followed in order to order chairs for the Chamber of the Western Provincial Council is grossly a violation of accepted norms and procurement procedures. Investigations reveal that it is not only 644,000 per chair. When you include the taxes, 644,000 plus approximately another 200,000. We need only 104 chairs, whereas the original plan was to import 150 chairs. As long as I am here, I will not allow anything of this sort. I am not going to be subjected to any pressures from anyone. No one can put pressure on me, and up to now, no official came to put pressure. I am working independently according to my conscience, and I will continue to do so. New chairs are needed, but it has to be either made in Sri Lanka or assembled in Sri Lanka, and the price should be reasonably acceptable price, taking into consideration the social economic conditions of the people in this country.
Chief Minister of the Western Province meanwhile responded to the allegations of violating accepted norms to order chairs to the Western Provincial Council.
ඔතුමා කොහොම හරි වැඩේ කරන්න ලෑස්ති වුණානේ කොහොම හරි
නෑ ඒක බොරු කතාවක් ඒ ඕගොල්ලෝනේ හැදුවේ මේ මාව මේ කාටුන් ගන්න ඉතින් හොඳයි මට
තීරණය ගන්න අවස්ථාවේ මුල් අවස්ථාවේදී මේ ආණ්ඩුකාරවරයාත් හිටියද ඔය තීරණය ගන්න අවස්ථාවේ මේකට පුටු ගෙන්විය යුතුයි කියන
අපි කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ ගන්න තීන්දුවක් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ආණ්ඩුකාරවරයාට යනවා. එතකොට එතුමා අනුමත කරාට පස්සේ තමයි අපේ නිලධාරි ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්නේ. එතුමාගෙනුත් ඒ අනුමැතිය ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා ඒ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩල වාර්තාවලට.
කවුද වැරද්ද කළා තියෙන්නේ එතකොට?
මේක ගන්න ඕනේ චෝදනාව අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණේ මේ ලක්ෂ්මන් නිපුණාරච්චි ගන්න ඕනේ. මේක මහ ඇමතිට ගන්න අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now let's take a look at some business news. Minister of Finance Mangala SAMARAWEERA says the government has provided significant concessions to various sectors including tourism, exports, IT, education and agriculture via the England Revenue Act. Minister SAMARAWEERA made this remark at a function to declare open the tourist VAT refund scheme at the Bandaranaike International Airport recently. He also said that the newly introduced VAT-free shopping for tourists will encourage them to remain longer for a greater experience.
In the Inland Revenue Act, we have provided significant concessions to sectors including tourism, exports, IT, education and agriculture, all of which are taxed at 14% of corporate tax. This is in addition to the attractive capital allowances which provide a major tax break for new investment. The Tourist VAT Refund Scheme is a 2018 budget proposal which will provide a significant boost for the tourism sector and also for the retail sector. Neighboring countries including Thailand and Singapore have become regional shopping centers, and utilizing VAT-free shopping has been an impetus to achieve this status. Sri Lanka has similar potential to exploit such opportunities, particularly considering its significant tourism assets over above shopping and retail. I expect the TVRS to provide a significant incentive for luxury retail operators in Sri Lanka. There are already a number of shopping destinations with major global brands beginning to establish in Sri Lanka, and this trend can only benefit and further expand with the tourist VAT refund mechanism. We look forward to seeing enhanced investments from this sector.
And now to give you a market update, Colombo equities were higher at the close of trading today as gains in the information technology, chemicals and pharmaceuticals as well as healthcare sectors propelled shares higher. The all-share price index added 0.03%. The highlight of the day was the acquisition of 31.1%, amounting to 38.3 million shares of Dunham's Capital by Jan Shakti plc via two crossings. Foreign investors were net sellers at the end of the day with net outflow of 42 million rupees. We now have details from Hiruni Pereira from First Capital Holdings.
Today market ended in green, reversing the negative sentiment witnessed for the last 3 days, mainly contributed by Dunham's Capital and Dialogue. SPI witnessed a volatile trend during the day, reaching an intraday high of 6,066, an intraday low of 6,056, and closing the day at 6,061, marginally gaining 2 points. Turnover has increased to cross 1 billion. A net foreign outflow was witnessed for the second consecutive day with low foreign participation.
The Sri Lankan rupee closed weaker at a fresh all-time low of 162 rupees and 90 cents per dollar today due to higher dollar demand from importers. The local currency surpassed its previous low of 162 rupees and 70 cents in the previous session. The rupee has lost 0.9% this month and 6.1% so far this year. Now let's take a look at today's forex rates. Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7. Welcome back. Now let's take a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world. Despite international condemnation, Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi has vehemently defended the imprisonment of 2 Reuters journalists who were given 7-year jail terms after reporting on the massacre of Rohingya Muslims in Rakhine State. She said the duo had broken the law and their conviction had nothing to do with freedom of expression at all.
Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi had remained notably silent over the imprisonment of 2 Reuters journalists, which was widely condemned by international governments and the UN as a miscarriage of justice and a symbol of the major regression of freedom of expression in Myanmar. But in her first public comments since the verdict were handed down to Avalon and Kyaw Soe Oo last week, Aung San Suu Kyi insisted their imprisonment was justified and that the case had nothing to do with freedom of expression. She said the 2 journalists were not jailed for being journalists, but for breaking the colonial-era Official Secrets Act. The 2 were sentenced for possession of police documents while investigating the killing of Rohingya Muslims. Since last year, at least 700,000 Rohingya have fled Myanmar and the UN has called for top military figures to be investigated for genocide.
Now moving on to sports. Chief Executive Officer of Sri Lanka Cricket Ashley De Silva urges media to help stop bad publicity that would tarnish the image of the institution. SLC convened a media briefing at its headquarters today to elaborate on the attempt by one of its employees to embezzle $5.5 million to an offshore bank account.
Parties outside. So they are trying to bring the image down of the organization. And we have professionals working here. Likewise, there are professionals who are conducting these inquiries as well. And we have carried out the right process at the end of the day. Immediately after we got to know about it, we sent him on compulsory leave after carrying out investigations internally. After we found out certain things only, we decided to send him on compulsory leave. So what I'm saying is not to bring the image down of the organization by giving bad publicity. Because what happens is the image of the organization, we are about to start the England tour and nothing has come to a standstill at Sri Lanka Cricket. Even though this incident happened, we have not sealed the finance department. Functions are normal. We basically give make the payments on time. Everything is going smoothly. Why we even decided to give it to the FCID? Because it was the financial crime, right? And we felt that they have the expertise to carry out the investigations. But the IGP himself has decided it should be done by the CID.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
We have Manusha Jayatilaka standing by at the Derana Weather Centre with your forecast first.
A very good evening everyone and welcome to Forecast First. There will be some scorching temperatures in the northern and eastern parts of the island tomorrow with the highest temperature of 35 degrees Celsius expected in the Mullaitivu district. As usual, it will be much mild in the central hills with the lowest temperature of 21 degrees expected from the region. There won't be much rain in the island tomorrow and definitely not in the upper part of the country, but there will be thunder showers in Kandy and some light showers in Hambantota and Matara districts. That's all that we have from the Weather Centre tonight. Let's now take a look at your city-by-city forecast.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. And before we go, we'd like to leave you with some aerial visuals of the Nine-Arch Bridge in Demodara. Spanning 91 metres at a height of 24 metres, the Nine-Arch is one of the best examples of colonial-era railway construction in the country. The construction of the bridge is generally attributed to a Ceylonese builder P.K. Appuhami during British rule. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.